We search for love in the most unexpected places. A fragile bloom in the cold.
Have you ever felt a connection so intense it defied logic? A pull that reshaped your entire world, even if it meant risking everything? Welcome to Alien Whispers, where the most extraordinary stories of the cosmos unfold. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay with us to hear how one forbidden bond ignited a galactic secret. You won't want to miss a single moment. The Ethelberg orbital citadel hummed with the quiet efficiency of 1,000 interlocking systems, a metallic heartbeat against the void. Commander Valerius Rhen stood on the main observation deck, his hands, scaled with the iridescent gold of his Solarian people, clasped loosely behind his back. His gaze was fixed on the distant, swirling expanse of the Viridian Nebula, a cosmic masterpiece he'd seen countless times but never truly felt until recently. It had been 7 cycles since the Cosmic Council reluctantly opened its ancient gates to the Terrans, a species known for their volatile emotions and unpredictable nature. And 7 cycles since Valerius, a strategist renowned for his iron will and logical precision, found himself bound by protocol to a Terran liaison, Elias Thorne. Elias was a puzzle, a discordant note in Valerius's perfectly ordered symphony. Valerius had commanded fleets through asteroid storms, outmaneuvered cunning pirate lords, and never once misjudged an opponent. Yet, Elias, with his calm, steady hazel eyes and that infuriatingly simple directness, left Valerius's analytical mind in knots. Where others from newly integrated species sought to prove their worth with boisterous displays or intricate political maneuvering, Elias merely did his duty, quietly, effectively, and with a disconcerting lack of fanfare. Too quiet. Too human. The faint, emerald-green veins beneath Valerius's golden scales pulsed with a subtle agitation, a minor tell he usually suppressed effortlessly. His people, the Solarians, built their society on absolute certainty, on earned trust forged in the crucible of shared purpose. But Terrans, they spoke of concepts like passion and devotion as if they held more weight than strategic advantage. Still calibrating the emotional spectrum of the newly integrated? A voice, smooth as polished obsidian, drifted from behind him. Valerius didn't turn. Lieutenant Nyxara, his most trusted operative, approached with the silent, fluid grace of a deep space hunter. Where Valerius's frame was broad, designed for the gravitas of command, his golden scales bearing the faint, silvery scars of countless skirmishes, Nyxara was crafted for a different kind of precision. Her deep blue skin seemed to absorb the ambient light, giving her an almost ethereal glow, and her form, while strong, was undeniably alluring, designed by generations of genetic refinement for optimal stealth and influence. Her eyes, like twin pools of liquid night, held a captivating depth, and her features were exquisitely sharp, capable of conveying subtle invitation with a mere tilt of her head. I analyze all variables, Nyxara. Not just emotional ones, Valerius replied, his tone clipped, though the emerald pulse at his neck intensified slightly. Of course, Commander. One simply stands alone, observing the profound complexities of galactic coexistence, Nyxara mused, a faint, knowing smile playing on her perfect lips as she came to stand beside him. And what conclusions has your current analysis yielded regarding Emissary Thorne? Valerius finally turned, his golden eyes meeting her dark ones. I have a new objective for you, Lieutenant. One that demands your singular expertise. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Nyxara was more than just his operative. She was a master of subtle manipulation, her intellect as keen as her captivating beauty. The Terran, Valerius continued, his voice low, almost a whisper. I need to ascertain his true loyalties. To the Council. To us. Nyxara's lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile, her blue skin deepening in hue, a subtle flush. And you wish for me to explore his vulnerabilities? To discover his breaking point? Precisely, Valerius affirmed, his gaze unwavering. See if he can be redirected. Can you achieve this, Lieutenant? Nyxara's laugh was soft, like the whisper of solar winds through ancient crystals. Commander, I have never yet encountered a sentient male who could resist my persuasions for more than a few stellar rotations. A Terran? They are notoriously susceptible. He will not withstand even a single standard cycle. Something unfamiliar, a tight, cold knot, formed deep within Valerius's chest at those words. He dismissed it instantly. This was about security, about the future of the Solarian people. If Elias Thorne was to hold such a pivotal position, Valerius needed to unearth his weaknesses before any rival faction, seen or unseen, could exploit them. 3 cycles later, Nyxara made her move. The Nebula Lounge, a sprawling communal area within the Citadel, was mostly quiet during the off-duty hours, just a scattering of crew enjoying personal downtime in the softly glowing alcoves. Elias sat alone at a secluded table, nursing a steaming Terran beverage, his focus absorbed by a projected data screen. Nyxara had chosen her attire with exquisite care, a sleek, form-fitting tunic of deep, shimmering violet that subtly enhanced her natural contours while maintaining an air of casual elegance. She approached with the silent, predatory grace of a hunter, allowing her innate, intoxicating aura to precede her. Emissary Thorne, her voice was a silken murmur, a perfect blend of genuine interest and subtle invitation. Elias looked up. Nyxara anticipated the familiar flicker of immediate attraction in his eyes, the subtle slackening of his posture. Instead, his hazel eyes remained clear, alert, and surprisingly, unyielding. "Lieutenant Nyxara, isn't it?" From strategic oversight. He gestured to the empty chair opposite him. "Please, join me." She glided into the seat, allowing her knee to brush lightly against his as she settled, a deliberate, almost imperceptible surge of her potent pheromones released into his space. "You know my designation? I'm truly flattered." "Commander Rhen often speaks highly of your capabilities," Elias replied, taking another measured sip of his drink. "He says you're one of the most effective operatives he's ever had under his command." Nyxara blinked. In her extensive experience, males rarely, if ever, wanted to discuss her professional achievements when she was this close, dressed this alluringly. "The commander is exceedingly generous with his praise." "I don't believe he is." Elias's voice carried a genuine note of respect, almost a quiet reverence. "From what I've observed, Valerius Rhen doesn't utter a word he doesn't mean. It's one of the qualities I most admire about him." The way he articulated Valerius's designation, with a warmth that was undeniably deep, made Nyxara pause. She had expected professionalism, perhaps even a detached coolness. But this was an affection she hadn't accounted for. "You care for him," Nyxara stated, momentarily forgetting the intricate dance of her mission. Elias's smile was soft, almost youthful, a stark contrast to his usual composed demeanor. "He's an extraordinary leader. Strong, brilliant, utterly dedicated to the survival of his people. I've truly never encountered anyone quite like him." He paused, as if realizing he'd revealed more than intended. "But I'm sure you know that better than anyone, Lieutenant." Nyxara felt a peculiar flutter in her chest, a sensation she couldn't immediately identify. She had arrived expecting an easy conquest, another male to fall under her engineered charm. Instead, she had stumbled upon someone whose heart was already claimed, and who spoke of that claim with such heartfelt devotion that it made her own potent allure feel strangely hollow. "Would you like another stimulant?" Elias offered, seemingly oblivious to her internal turmoil. "I was just about to order some of that Terran Sunglow brew the new cargo run just brought in." Nyxara began, then found herself nodding. "Yes, that would be agreeable." As Elias signaled for a server drone, Nyxara's gaze drifted, catching sight of a familiar, golden-scaled figure in the shadowed alcove near the entrance. Valerius Rhen stood there, watching them. His iridescent features were partially obscured by the dim lighting, but his rigid posture, the subtle clenching of his hands, spoke volumes. He was tense, waiting. And unless Nyxara was profoundly mistaken, there was a fleeting, almost vulnerable uncertainty in the way the commander held himself. This assignment, Nyxara realized with a jolt, was going to be far more intricate than she had ever anticipated. The following cycles brought a series of unexpected discoveries for Nyxara, though not the kind her mission had intended. She subtly intensified her efforts, especially during the rigorous zero-gravity combat drills. She often partnered with Elias, letting their bodies press close during simulated grappling. Her potent Xylosian pheromones, refined over generations to overwhelm, should have inundated his Terran senses. Yet, he remained singularly focused on technique. He offered calm, respectful corrections to her form, his voice even, as if instructing any fellow recruit. "Your energy redirection is too broad for someone with your agility," he'd calmly noted during a particularly intense drill, his hands briefly, impersonally, steadying her shoulder. "Focus the force into a tighter point. You'll achieve more effective disarms." Any other male would have exploited the contact, letting their hands linger, to stray. Elias simply adjusted her position, stepped back, and waited for her signal to resume. Nyxara found herself, to her surprise, actually listening to his advice, incorporating his tactical insights. "Better." Elias nodded approvingly as she executed a perfect maneuver. "You have a natural gift for adapting. Your species' flexible musculature provides a significant advantage in fluid combat. You're not what I expected, Nyxara admitted, accepting the cool, synthetic towel he offered as they finished their session. She'd planned a practiced, flirtatious remark, something to draw him deeper. Instead, the words came out with an uncharacteristic honesty. Most males of other species, they treat me differently. Like I'm a trophy to be won, rather than a being to be understood. Elias's expression grew thoughtful, a faint crease appearing between his brows. That must be lonely. The simple observation hit her with the force of a plasma bolt. Lonely. She had never articulated it that way. But yes, beneath the layers of engineered admiration and relentless desire, she was profoundly, utterly alone. I suppose it is, she said quietly, her gaze dropping to the towel in her hands. Commander Rhen mentioned you've been bypassed for the Advanced Strategic Unit twice, despite your exemplary tactical scores, Elias continued as they walked toward the sonic showers. Politics, Nyxara scoffed, then stared at him. You discussed my career path with the commander? He values your abilities immensely. Elias's voice carried a genuine note of concern. He's expressed frustration that the senior strategists can't see past your unique enhancements to recognize your brilliant mind. He's been advocating for a revised evaluation protocol. Something unfamiliar, something warm and expansive, bloomed in Nyxara's chest. Valerius Rhen, her strict, unyielding commander, had been subtly pushing for her advancement. And Elias had not only listened but remembered the specific details. I didn't know, she whispered, the admission feeling strangely vulnerable. He doesn't like to make a display of it, Elias replied, a faint smile touching his lips. He says, true leaders champion their people in silence. He paused at the junction leading to the separate facilities. You're fortunate, Lieutenant, to have someone who believes in you like that. As he disappeared into the Terran section of the hygiene bay, Nyxara remained frozen in the corridor. She had come to seduce him, to expose a potential disloyalty. Instead, she was unearthing truths about her own commander, truths that made her chest tighten with emotions she couldn't name. And about Elias. He was a puzzle that refused to conform to any known solution. From a shadowed observation portal near the training bay, Valerius Rhen had watched the entire exchange, a growing bewilderment etched onto his golden features. He had fully expected Elias to succumb to Nyxara's calculated charms by now. Instead, he was talking to her, truly conversing, as if Nyxara were a sentient being with thoughts and feelings, rather than a tool of influence. And the way Nyxara had looked at him as he walked away, that wasn't the satisfied smirk of a successful predator. That was something else entirely. Valerius's emerald veins pulsed with an emotion he refused to acknowledge. Jealousy. It was a base, a logical reaction, beneath a commander of his standing. Yet, witnessing Elias's easy, genuine kindness toward Nyxara stirred something dark, something possessive and profoundly unsettling, deep within him. 2 cycles later, Nyxara initiated her most audacious maneuver yet. She found Elias in the Zenith Observation Dome during his off-duty hours, gazing out at the Crimson Veil Galaxy, its spiraling arms painting the nearby void in hues of deep ruby and fiery orange. She dressed with meticulous care, a flowing, translucent gown that shimmered against her deep blue skin, elegant rather than overtly provocative. Magnificent, isn't it? She murmured, settling beside him on the curved, cushioned bench. Truly, Elias agreed, though his eyes remained fixed on the cosmic tapestry outside. Commander Rhen once told me his people have 37 distinct terms for nebulae, depending on their chromatic spectrum and atmospheric anomalies. You contemplate him often, Nyxara observed, a subtle shift in her tone. I contemplate many things. His smile was gentle, but distant, his gaze still lost in the stars. He's broadening my perspective, helping me to interpret the universe through Solarian sensibilities. It's enlightening. Nyxara shifted closer, subtly, intimately, ensuring her warmth would be unmistakably apparent. And what do you contemplate when you perceive it through Terran sensibilities? Finally, Elias turned to look at her, his hazel eyes meeting her dark ones. For a suspended moment, their faces were mere inches apart. Nyxara felt her enhanced biology respond instinctively to his proximity, a familiar, almost automatic tightening in her core. Her lips parted slightly, an invitation that, in her long and varied experience, had never once been refused. I contemplate, Elias said softly, his voice a low, resonant murmur, that beauty holds its deepest meaning when shared with someone you love. The words hung in the charged air between them, an invisible, yet impenetrable barrier. Not cruel, not explicitly rejecting, just final. Nyxara felt something crack inside her chest. Not heartbreak, not in the conventional Terran sense, but something far deeper, a recognition that she had been pursuing the wrong prize entirely. You truly love him, she whispered, the realization hitting her with startling clarity. With every fiber of my being, Elias replied simply, his gaze unwavering, as if summoned by his very words. Valerius Rhen appeared in the domed doorway, his golden features taut, his emerald veins pulsing faintly with poorly controlled emotion. Emissary Thorne, he said, his voice carefully neutral, clipped. We need to discuss tomorrow's reconnaissance assignments. Of course, Commander. Elias rose immediately, but paused, looking back at Nyxara. Thank you for the conversation, Lieutenant. I hope you find what you're searching for. As they departed together, a silent, almost palpable tension radiating between them, Nyxara remained on the bench, her gaze fixed on the shimmering chaos of the Crimson Veil. For the first time in her genetically refined life, she truly comprehended what it meant to desire something unattainable and, paradoxically, to respect the individual who possessed it. The confrontation Nyxara had anticipated, indeed dreaded, arrived 3 cycles later. You're failing, Lieutenant, Valerius Rhen stated without preamble as Nyxara entered the commander's private office. The space was stark, almost ascetic. Holographic tactical displays dominated one wall, intermixed with ancient Solarian weaponry and a single, incongruous personal item, a small, crystalline star chart from their distant home world. It's been over a full cycle now. He should have been compromised, his loyalty undermined. What is taking so long, Nyxara? Valerius's emerald veins pulsed with unmistakable agitation. Nyxara felt a flush rise on her deep blue cheeks, a sensation both unfamiliar and unwelcome. He's different than expected, Commander. Different how? Valerius's voice was sharp, laced with impatience. He doesn't perceive me as a conquest, Nyxara admitted, the words emerging more vulnerably than she intended. He sees me as a person. He discusses strategy with me, Commander. He talks about my career, about my insights, rather than just what I look like. Valerius's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering across his golden features. And then, Nyxara took a deep breath, the admission heavy on her tongue. And I think I'm falling in love with him. The silence that followed stretched between them, a chasm. Valerius Rhen's golden hands clenched into tight fists, his scales darkening almost imperceptibly with barely contained emotion. You're compromised, he stated finally, his voice low, strained. I'm calling off the mission. No. The word escaped before Nyxara could halt it. Please, Commander, just grant me a little more time. Time for what? To make a fool of yourself over a Terran who clearly has no interest in you beyond polite conversation? Valerius's words landed like physical blows, sharp and precise. But Nyxara stood her ground, an unfamiliar defiance stiffening her posture. Time to comprehend why you're so terrified of trusting him. Valerius Rhen went utterly still, his gaze piercing. Explain yourself, Lieutenant. You could have assessed his loyalty in a dozen other ways, Nyxara countered, stepping closer, her voice growing stronger, more resolute. Combat simulations, data decryption, resource allocation dilemmas. Instead, you chose seduction. Why, Commander? Nyxara paused, her eyes locking onto Valerius's. Because it's the most fundamental weakness? No. Her voice hardened. Because you're afraid of caring about him. And you needed absolute, undeniable proof that he would betray that care. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and inescapable. Valerius Rhen's emerald veins had faded to an almost translucent white, a definitive sign of profound emotional distress for a Solarian. Get out, he whispered, his voice barely audible. That night, Nyxara found Elias in the Ethelberg's Terran Flora Bay, a small, enclosed hydroponic section where he had been permitted to cultivate a small array of Earth-native plants. The vibrant green growing things seemed impossibly delicate amidst the angular metal and cold crystal of the starship. Sun oranges, he said without looking up as she approached, his hands gently tending to a trailing vine. My grandmother grew them in her garden back on the old world. I thought perhaps Commander Rhen might enjoy them when they ripen. You're cultivating them for him? Nyxara asked, her voice tinged with surprise. among other things. He gestured to a nearby row of deep blue, intricate flowering plants. These are from his home world. The seeds were in the Citadel's biological database, but no one had ever bothered to cultivate them. I thought he might appreciate having something familiar, something of home. Nyxara knelt beside him, studying the alien flowers. They possessed a quiet, understated beauty. They're beautiful. He is too, Elias said quietly, his gaze still on the delicate petals. But he doesn't believe it. He perceives beauty as weakness, as softness. He spent so long being strong for everyone else, protecting his people, that he's forgotten how to be vulnerable. Is that why you won't? With me? Nyxara asked, her voice barely a whisper, the engineered allure forgotten. Elias's hands stilled in the rich soil. Nyxara, I know you don't love me. I know your heart, the true core of it, belongs to him. But I also know you're solitary. And I care about you, Lieutenant. More than I probably should. She reached out, her deep blue fingers brushing lightly against his soil-stained ones. For a suspended moment, he didn't pull away. You're an extraordinary being, he said softly, his hazel eyes meeting hers. Beautiful, intelligent, brave. Someday, someone is going to love you the way you deserve to be loved. But not me. She leaned closer, drawn by his warmth and the gentle, profound sadness in his eyes. Just once, Elias. Just to know what it truly feels like to be desired for who I am, rather than what I am. Their faces were inches apart, his breath warm against her lips. For a single, agonizing heartbeat, Nyxara thought he might yield. Then, he gently pulled back, his hand coming up to cup her cheek in a gesture that was profoundly tender, but ultimately, final. You deserve more than just once, he said, his voice husky. You deserve everything. The sudden sound of footsteps made them both turn. Valerius Rhen stood in the doorway of the Flora Bay, his golden features stark in the artificial grow lights. He had clearly been watching for some time. Commander, Elias started to rise, but Valerius held up a hand. Continue your work, Emissary Thorne. I need to speak with Lieutenant Nyxara. As they left the bay together, Nyxara felt the intense weight of her commander's gaze upon her. But when she glanced back, Valerius was staring at Elias with an expression Nyxara had never witnessed before, raw, unguarded, almost aching with a quiet longing. He's cultivating flora from our home world, Valerius said quietly as they walked through the sterile corridors. Yes, no one has ever. He stopped, composing himself, his usual rigid control reasserting itself. The mission is concluded, Lieutenant. Return to your regular duties. Commander, Ayo. That's an order, Nyxara. But as they reached the junction where their paths diverged, Valerius caught her arm, his touch surprisingly gentle. Nyxara, his voice was softer now, almost uncertain. What you said earlier, about being afraid to care. Do you think you could care for someone like me? The raw vulnerability in her commander's voice broke Nyxara's heart all over again, a different kind of pain than before. I think, she said carefully, her gaze meeting Valerius's, that he already does. The question is whether you're brave enough to let him. Hours later, Valerius Rhen found himself standing outside Elias Thorne's quarters, his hand hovering above the door chime. He had meticulously rehearsed the words he wanted to speak, but now they seemed utterly inadequate, hollow. The door slid open before he could even activate the chime. Commander Rhen, Elias said, his expression one of calm unsurprise. I had a feeling you might come. I wanted to express my gratitude, he said formally, the words stiff on his tongue, for the plants. It was thoughtful. It was selfish, he replied, stepping aside to allow him entry. I wanted to see you smile. His quarters were simple, functional, yet infused with small, personal touches that spoke volumes of the Terran who inhabited them. A shelf lined with ancient paper-bound volumes, actual physical books, dominated one wall. A holographic photograph of a vibrant, verdant Terran landscape sat on his desk, beside what appeared to be a handwritten correspondence. Your kin? He asked, noting the direction of his gaze. My sister, he confirmed, a fond, gentle smile gracing his lips. She insists on sending letters the old-fashioned way. Claims electronic communication lacks soul. His smile softened further. She'd find you fascinating, Commander. She doesn't know me, Valerius stated. She knows you're important to me, Elias corrected, moving closer, his hazel eyes steady, unwavering on his. She knows I contemplate you every single solar cycle. Wonder what thoughts occupy your mind. Whether you are secure on missions I cannot share. Valerius felt his carefully constructed emotional walls, built over centuries, begin to tremble, to crumble. Elias, She knows I've never felt this depth of connection with anyone before. He finished, his voice a low, earnest hum. The words hung between them like a fragile bridge. Valerius could cross it, step into the terrifying unknown, or retreat to the safer, familiar ground of solitude. But looking into his eyes, seeing the complex blend of hope and quiet fear warring within them, he realized he was profoundly weary of being safe. "Show me," he whispered, the raw plea tearing from his throat. This time, when he reached for him, he did not pull away. The ensuing dawn brought no trace of regret, only a profound, bone-deep contentment that Valerius Rhen had never before experienced. He lay within Elias's embrace, his golden scales warm against his skin, observing the interplay of starlight across his gently sleeping features. For the first time in his long adult life, he felt peaceful. That newfound peace shattered abruptly when Elias's personal communicator chimed with an urgent, piercing message. "Emissary Thorne, please report to Lieutenant Nyxara's quarters immediately. Medical emergency." They dressed with swift, professional urgency, the abrupt call overriding the tender intimacy they had just shared. But as they hurried through the sterile corridors, Valerius caught Elias's worried, almost fearful glances, and something cold and unwelcome twisted in his chest. They found Nyxara's quarters dimly lit, the lieutenant seated on her bed, her back pressed against the cool wall. Her deep blue skin was pale, almost translucent, and her dark eyes were red-rimmed, swollen from recent weeping. "It's not a medical emergency," she said quietly, her voice hoarse. I couldn't carry this burden anymore." "Carry what burden, Lieutenant?" Elias asked, moving to sit across from her on the edge of the bed, while Valerius remained standing near the doorway, rigid and apprehensive. "Lie to you." Nyxara's voice was barely above a whisper. "About why I approached you. About what I was attempting to do." Valerius felt the blood drain from his golden face, a chilling dread seeping into his veins. "Nyxara, don't," he ordered, his voice a sharp, desperate plea. "He ordered me to compromise you." Nyxara continued, her eyes fixed on Elias, raw and brimming with unshed tears. "To test your loyalty, to ascertain if you would betray his trust." The silence that followed was deafening, suffocating. Elias went utterly still, his hazel eyes moving slowly, deliberately, between Nyxara and Valerius, a growing, stark comprehension dawning in their depths. "How long?" he asked quietly, his voice a flat monotone. "Since the very beginning," Nyxara replied, her voice breaking. "Every conversation, every training session, every moment I spent with you, it was all part of his design." Elias rose slowly, his movements careful, unerringly controlled. When he finally looked at Valerius, his expression was utterly unreadable, a blank void that terrified him more than any anger. "Is this true, Commander Rhen?" Valerius felt as if he were plummeting into a bottomless chasm. All the warmth from the night before, all the fragile connection and nascent trust, it was crumbling around him like fine ash. "Elias, I can explain. Is this true?" The command in his voice, a cutting edge she had never heard him use with him before, sliced through his defenses like a honed blade. He saw himself as Elias must perceive him now, calculating, manipulative, utterly devoid of honor, willing to exploit even his closest subordinate as a weapon against him. "Yes," he whispered, the single syllable a confession, a surrender. He nodded once, sharply, a motion of chilling finality. "I see. You don't understand, Elias," Valerius said desperately, pleading. "I had to know. I needed to know if you could be trusted." "You needed to know if I could be trusted." His voice was eerily calm, devoid of any discernible emotion. "So you decided to test me without my knowledge, using someone else whose feelings you were perfectly willing to sacrifice for your own peace of mind." "I was protecting you," Valerius began. "You were protecting yourself." Elias cut him off, his voice rising, a sharp, controlled edge finally emerging. "Protecting yourself from the possibility that you might be wrong about Terrans. About me." Nyxara made a sound like a choked sob. "I'm sorry, Elias. I am so sorry. I never intended for it to escalate this far. I never meant to feel, to fall in love with him." "To fall in love with him," Valerius finished, the words tasting like bitter poison on his tongue. "I know. I could see it happening. And you let it continue, Commander. Elias's attention shifted back to Valerius, his gaze piercing. You watched her falling apart, and you allowed it to continue. Because getting your answer was more important than the feelings of either of us. That's not, Valerius started, then stopped. Because it was true, wasn't it? He had witnessed Nyxara's growing attachment, seen the increasing desperation in her eyes whenever she looked at Elias. And he had permitted it to continue. Worse, he had felt a dark, jealous satisfaction at the unraveling of his own subordinate. I love you, he said. The words cracked, desperate, raw. Last night was beautiful, Elias said softly, his voice tinged with a profound sadness. And it was real, at least for me. But it was also built on a lie, Valerius. Not a lie. Valerius protested, his voice pleading. My feelings for you, they're real. They've been real for cycles. That's why I needed to know. You needed to know if I was worthy of your love, Elias finished, his voice gentle but firm, but you never once asked yourself if you were worthy of mine. The words struck him like physical blows, each syllable a precisely aimed impact. Valerius Rhen had commanded fleets, outmaneuvered empires, made decisions that impacted the lives of millions. Yet, he had never felt as utterly insignificant, as microscopically small, as he did in this devastating moment. I was afraid, he admitted, his voice breaking, the admission tearing through him. Afraid of trusting someone who might leave, who might betray me. I've been betrayed before, Elias. By allies, by friends, by people I thought I could trust. And when I started to feel something for you, you decided to sabotage it before it could hurt you, Elias said, his voice flat, resolute. Using Nyxara as your weapon. I never meant to hurt her, Valerius said, turning to look at his subordinate with genuine, overwhelming remorse. Nyxara. I am so sorry. Are you, Commander? Nyxara asked, slowly lifting her head, her dark eyes fixed on Valerius's. Because part of me suspects you're only sorry because it didn't work. Part of me thinks you're truly sorry only because he figured it out, not because you actually did it. The accusation hung in the air between them, an undeniable truth. Valerius Rhen desperately wanted to deny it, to craft an eloquent refutation, but the words wouldn't come. Because Nyxara was right. He wasn't sorry for testing Elias. He was sorry for being caught. You're right, he whispered, the admission a bitter taste on his tongue. I'm not sorry for testing him. I'm sorry for using you to do it. I'm sorry for letting you get hurt. But I'm not sorry for needing to know if he could be trusted. Then we have nothing further to discuss, Commander Rhen, Elias said, moving decisively towards the door. Wait. Valerius caught his arm, his golden fingers clamping onto his forearm. Please, Elias. I know I've shattered your trust, but you haven't shattered it, Elias said gently, almost sorrowfully, slowly removing his hand. You've merely shown me that you never had it to begin with. Trust isn't something you test, Valerius. It's something you choose to give. Then choose to give it now, he pleaded, desperation raw in his voice. I know I've made grave errors, but I can change. I can be better. Elias paused at the door, his hand resting on the control panel. Can you, Valerius? Because right now, I'm not certain you even truly comprehend what you've done wrong. I understand. Do you? He countered, his voice quiet but intense. Because I fear you perceive this as a tactical miscalculation, not a moral failing. I believe you're upset because your test failed, not because you fundamentally violated the trust of two individuals who genuinely cared about you. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Elias stepped into the corridor. Before it could completely close, he turned back, one final, lingering look. For what it's worth, Valerius. I did pass your test. I never wavered in my loyalty to you, even when you gave me every conceivable reason to. The question now is, can you pass mine? As the door hissed shut behind him, sealing him in the quiet desolation of Nyxara's quarters, Valerius sank slowly to his knees. The immense weight of what he had irrevocably lost crushed down upon him, suffocating. Beside him, Nyxara wept quietly, her deep blue shoulders trembling. And for the very first time in his long, storied life, Valerius Rhen understood with chilling clarity that some victories were simply not worth winning. 3 cycles of meticulous professional courtesy and carefully constructed distance followed. Elias Thorne performed his duties flawlessly, attended all required briefings, and treated both Valerius and Nyxara with unwavering, polite respect. It was precisely what Valerius had feared most. Not anger, not outright betrayal, but profound, chilling indifference. He threw himself into his work with an unprecedented, almost reckless intensity, leading complex tactical simulations, reviewing intricate strategic reports, and accepting the most dangerous deep space exploration assignments. If his crew noticed their commander's increasingly self-destructive behavior, they were too disciplined, too attuned to Solarian custom, to comment. It was Nyxara who finally confronted him. "You're going to get yourself disintegrated, Commander," Nyxara stated, entering Valerius's private office without so much as a preceding knock, as Valerius reviewed grim mission reports from their latest skirmish with Void Raiders. "That, Lieutenant, is not your concern, isn't it?" Nyxara moved closer, her blue features set with grim determination. "When you take unnecessary risks, Commander, you endanger the entire command team. Besides, someone needs to tell you that martyrdom doesn't suit you. It makes you look weak." Valerius looked up sharply, his emerald veins flaring with renewed anger. "Excuse me. You heard me." Nyxara didn't back down, her dark eyes unwavering. "You're wallowing in self-pity, Commander, hoping that if you throw yourself into enough perilous situations, Elias will somehow magically forget what you did and come rushing back to save you." "I am performing my duties," Valerius retorted, rising to his full, imposing height. "You're being a coward," Nyxara interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a laser. "The same coward who was too afraid to simply trust Elias in the first place." Valerius's golden scales darkened, his emerald veins blazing with barely contained rage. "You forget yourself, Lieutenant. Do you have any idea to whom you are speaking?" "I think I'm the only one in this entire conversation who's being truly honest, Commander Rhen," Nyxara countered, her stance unyielding. "You want him back? Then prove you've learned something. Prove you understand what trust actually means. And how, precisely, do you suggest I accomplish that?" Valerius's voice was laced with bitter sarcasm. "Start with me." The simple, direct words stopped Valerius cold, freezing his anger in its tracks. "What? You used me as a weapon against someone I cared for?" Nyxara continued, her voice unwavering, though a faint tremor was visible in her hand. "You observed my emotional unraveling, and you allowed it to continue, all for your own calculated purposes. If you genuinely want Elias to trust you, Commander, you must first demonstrate that you can be trusted with someone who possesses far less power to fight back than he does." Nyxara was right, and they both knew it. Valerius had spent so much time fixated on Elias's potential betrayal that he had utterly, tragically, ignored his own profound betrayal of his most loyal subordinate. "What do you want?" Valerius asked quietly, his voice stripped of all pretense. "I want you to formally recommend me for the senior diplomatic officer position, opening up on the Stellar Haven," Nyxara stated, her gaze direct, unwavering. "No strings attached. No hidden agenda. Just a recognition of my abilities based purely on merit." It was a significant promotion, one that would remove Nyxara from Valerius's command, placing her in a position of substantial authority on a highly regarded vessel. It would also mean irrevocably losing one of his most brilliant officers. "Consider it done," Valerius said, the words emerging without hesitation, without a second thought. Nyxara blinked, clearly expecting more resistance, more negotiation. "Just like that." "Just like that," Valerius confirmed, his voice firm. "You're correct. I exploited you, Nyxara, and I am profoundly sorry. You deserve far better than serving under a commander who would sacrifice your well-being for his own fragile peace of mind." For the first time in cycles, Nyxara's perfect lips curved into a genuine smile, a breathtaking sight. "Now, Commander Rhen," she murmured, "now you're beginning to comprehend." The transfer took 2 Terran cycles to process. On Nyxara's last night aboard the Ethelberg Orbital Citadel, she found Elias in the Terran Flora Bay, just as she had anticipated. The sun oranges had ripened, small, reddish-gold globes hanging heavy and vibrant on their vines. "He's recommending me for the promotion," Nyxara announced without preamble. Elias looked up from where he was meticulously tending the delicate Solarian flowers. "Congratulations, Lieutenant. It's truly well-deserved." "Is it?" Nyxara mused, a faint hint of self-doubt in her voice. "I'm not certain I've earned anything after what I did to you. You disclosed the truth to me, Nyxara, when you had absolutely no obligation to," Elias said gently, his hazel eyes warm with understanding. "That took courage." "It took 3 cycles of a profoundly guilty conscience," Nyxara countered, a small, wry smile touching her lips. She knelt beside him, studying the intricate alien blooms. "They're beautiful. Will you present them to him?" "I'm not certain he would want them from me now," Elias admitted, his hands stilling in the soil. "He's been coming here," Nyxara said quietly, her gaze meeting his. "When he believes no one can see him. He stands at the entrance and observes you working. But he never enters." Elias's hands froze completely. "How do you know this?" Because I've been observing too, Nyxara replied, a wistful quality to her voice. Trying to grasp the magnitude of what I helped to destroy. She carefully touched one of the delicate blue petals. He loves you, Elias. I can perceive it in the way he looks at you. Like you are something infinitely precious, something he's terrifyingly afraid to shatter again. Love isn't enough, Elias said, his voice low, resolute. Not without trust. Then perhaps it's time to discover if he has finally learned what trust truly means. That evening, Valerius Rhen made his way to the Terran Flora Bay, as he had every single night for the past 3 cycles. He told himself he came to meticulously check on the Citadel's vital food production systems, but the truth was far simpler and infinitely more painful. He needed to see him, even from a distance. He stopped abruptly at the entrance, expecting to find him alone, as usual. Instead, the bay was empty, save for a single, vibrant blue flower, placed carefully on the workstation. Its delicate petals glowed softly in the artificial light, a beacon in the quiet space. It's called an ethel blossom. Elias's voice came from behind him, calm and resonant. In your language, Commander, it translates to new dawn. He turned, his heart lurching, to find him standing in the corridor, his hazel eyes steady, unwavering on his. Elias, he breathed, his voice a barely audible whisper. I've been contemplating what you articulated. About trust being something one chooses to give. He stepped into the bay, moving with quiet purpose to stand beside the workstation, beside the glowing flower. And I realize, Valerius, that I've been just as culpable in withholding it. You had every right, he admitted, shame burning in his chest. I did, he affirmed, his voice gentle. Because the being I came to admire is brave enough to lead vast fleets into battle. Intelligent enough to outmaneuver adversaries twice his size. And strong enough, Valerius, to admit when he is profoundly mistaken. His voice grew softer, more intimate. That being, he deserves the chance to evolve. He deserves the chance to build that trust. Valerius felt tears he had never allowed himself to shed burn fiercely behind his eyes, a stinging sensation he refused to acknowledge. I don't know if I can be what you require me to be, Elias. I don't require you to be flawless, Valerius, Elias said, reaching out, his hands gently cupping his face. His touch was warm, reassuring. I need you to be real, to trust me enough to be vulnerable, to allow yourself to make mistakes, to permit me to help carry your burdens, instead of relentlessly testing whether I'm strong enough to bear them alone. His thumb brushed away a tear he hadn't realized was falling. And if you should fail? If you hurt me again? He smiled, a soft, comforting light in his eyes. Then we will figure it out. Together. That, Valerius, is what true partners do. He kissed him then, pouring all his fear and all his hope and all his desperate, raw love into the profound connection that surged between them. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead against his, finding solace in his proximity. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. For testing you. For utilizing Nyxara. For being too profoundly afraid to trust what we had. What we could have. I know, he said simply, his voice a balm to his wounded soul. And I forgive you. Just like that. Just like that, his smile was soft, undeniably genuine. But, Valerius, if you ever test me again instead of simply communicating with me, I'm going to be very, very disappointed. He laughed then, a genuine, joyful sound that surprised them both, echoing sweetly in the quiet bay. Duly noted, Emissary Thorne. Duly noted. He picked up the glowing ethel blossom flower, offering it to him. Now, Commander, would you care to assist me in harvesting these sun oranges? I thought we might share them with the crew. As they worked side by side in the soft, nurturing light of the Terran Flora Bay, their hands brushing, their quiet conversation weaving between the rustling leaves, Valerius Rhen understood. Trust wasn't something you earned through calculated tests or grueling trials. It was something you built, day by day, choice by choice, with patience and forgiveness, and the raw courage to simply be vulnerable. 6 cycles later, when Nyxara visited the Ethelberg Orbital Citadel as the newly promoted senior diplomatic officer of the Stellar Haven, she found them in the Terran Flora Bay once more. Elias was patiently instructing Valerius on the proper pruning techniques for Earth roses, while Valerius, in turn, was animatedly explaining the intricate strategic applications of various Solarian combat forms. Some things, it seems, never truly change, Nyxara observed with amused affection, leaning against the doorway. Some things do, Valerius replied, his emerald veins glowing with quiet contentment as Elias's arms settled easily, intimately, around his waist. The important ones. And as they stood together, three disparate beings amidst the vibrant, intertwined beauty of human and alien flora, Nyxara understood. Sometimes, the greatest victories emerge not from conquest or manipulation, but from the courage to trust, to forgive, and to simply grow. And that, dear listeners, is the profound power of trust forged in the heart of the cosmos. If this story touched your soul, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with those who need a whisper of hope, and don't forget to subscribe to Alien Whispers for more tales from beyond the stars. What did you think of Valerius and Elias's journey? Let us know in the comments below.